In this video, we are going to create this simple yet modern portfolio website using React and Tailwind. To create the website, we are going to start from absolute scratch. First, I will show you how to create a React project with Tailwind, and then to make it easier to follow, we're gonna go part by part. Also, if you don't want to deal with creating the project from scratch, there is going to be a starter code available in the description as well. You can download that file and start from there. Let's take a look at the website. First, we're going to create this header section with some text on the left and this image on the right. Then we're going to create the about section, the work experience, education, skills, and the project section. And finally, we're going to create the get in touch section with this little navbar. This is the home icon. If you click on it, it will take you back to the home section. And these are education, projects, and get in touch sections. The website is also responsive because we are going to use Tailwind. It makes it really easy to make the website responsive. So if you are ready, let's get into it. So to start the project from scratch, just create a new folder on your desktop. Open that folder in VS Code. Before we start to create the project, go into the extensions and make sure you have installed this extension called React Snippets. This extension basically provides us some shortcuts to use with React. In this video, we are going to use this to create components easily. Also, for the icons, we're going to use hero icons. You can find a link in the description to this website. Go to the website and leave it open. Also, click on this link to Tailwind CSS documents. And following these steps, we're going to create a React project with Tailwind inside. So we are going to create the project by using Vite. So let's use npm create Vite at latest. And this is going to create a React project by using the latest version of Vite. This is going to ask you to install the Vite package. Say yes. For the project name, we are just going to use a dot. Otherwise, if you give the project a name, it is going to create another folder inside this current folder. And we want to create the project inside this current folder. So let's put a dot. The package name can stay the same. We're going to use React and JavaScript. Also, we need to install the dependencies as well. So let's use npm install. It is going to take a couple of seconds. So we have created the React project. The next thing to do is to add Tailwind inside. Let's open a new terminal by clicking on this plus button. So we have already created the project. So we're going to start with the second step, install Tailwind CSS. Let's copy this first command. This is going to install Tailwind, post CSS, and auto prefixer as dependencies. That is what the -d means. Let's copy this. After it's done, we need to execute the package by using npx tailwind css initialize -p. And this is going to create a Tailwind config file. As you can see, we have the config file. Next, we are going to copy and paste these template paths inside the Tailwind config file. We can close the terminal. Inside this config.js file, delete everything and paste this one. By doing this, Tailwind can find its classes inside these type of folders. So we are basically telling Tailwind where to look for, such as JavaScript files, TypeScript files, and JSX files. And it is going to look for these files inside the source folder. As you can see, we have all of these files inside the source folder. And finally, we are going to copy and paste the utility classes. We're going to paste it inside the main index.css file. Let's delete everything inside and paste this. Also, let's clean up the code. We are going to delete this app.css file. Inside the public file, we're going to delete this svg. inside the assets, we are going to delete this one as well. Let's go into the app.jsx file, delete all of these imports, delete these use state, and empty this div. Let's put a h1 that says hello world. Open up your console, and to run this project on the browser, we're going to use npm run dev. Let's click on this address. Let's see if the Tailwind is working fine. Let's make the text a lot bigger and bold. And as you can see, we have the project running on the browser and Tailwind is working. We can close the Tailwind website. And finally, we can get started with the project. So the first thing that we are going to do is to create a container for the components that we are going to create. Since we are using React for every section, we're going to create a component. So let's start by creating a div. Let's make it cover the entire page by using minimum age screen. That means minimum height 100 VH. Gonna make this a flex container and center the items inside. Let's set the width to 100%. And we're gonna use anti-aliased. And this is basically font smoothing for browsers. Inside this div, I'm gonna create a main. I'm gonna make this one cover the entire page as well. So inside this main, we're gonna have the components, and every single component is going to be stacked on top of each other. So I will make this a flex container and change the flex direction to column to bring the components on top of each other. We're gonna put some space between them using space UI 10, and we're gonna set the maximum width to 3x large, and that means maximum width 48 RAM, 768 pixels, padding UI 10, that means padding top and bottom 2.5 RAM, and px5, that means padding on the left and right 1.25, and these are for the smaller screens. For the screens that are bigger than small, PUI is going to be 20 and PX is going to be 10. So these breakpoints are basically minimum widths for screens. So for the screens that are larger than 640, these stylings are going to get applied. So inside this, we're going to put the components, but first we need to create them. Let's go into the source folder. Let's create a new folder called components. Inside the components, we're going to create 8 components. We're going to start with the header, about. All of these files are going to be JSX files. Experience, education, skills, projects, contacts, and finally navbar.jsx. So to be able to import these components into this app file, we need to have functions in them. Right now they are empty and they are basically not components yet. So let's start with header and create a component for each of these files. To create the components, we're going to use a shortcut provided by the extension you downloaded, which is going to be RAFCE. And you can actually see the description, React arrow function export component. This is going to create a arrow function using the file's name. So we have a arrow function with the name header. We can delete this import React because it's not necessary anymore. Inside, it returns a div with the header text inside, and it also automatically exports the component as well. And now inside the app.jsx file, as you can see, the header is going to be available to import right now because we have a function inside. Let's do the same for the others. And navbar is the last one. Let's import them. And we have imported all of the components and we display them inside this main. And here we have the container and the components inside. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we're gonna go part by part. Let's go into the header.jsx file and start by creating the header. So from now on, we're gonna be using a couple of images, and inside this project, inside the public folder, I will copy and paste all the images that I'm going to use. If you have started a project using the starter code, you will already have these images inside the public folder. If you have started from scratch, you can download the assets folder in the description to get all of these images. So let's start to create the header. First, I will make this a flex container and change the flex direction to column reverse for the smaller screens. And for the small screens, the flex direction is going to be row. Items start to bring the items to the left. Justify between to put all the available space in between the elements. Gap is going to be 3. And for the medium screens, the gap is going to be 8. So this is the container for the header section. Inside this, we're going to have another div. And right under it, we're going to have an image. Inside this div, we're going to have the information. So let's make this a flex container and change the flex direction to column. Let's put some gap between them. You're gonna have a h1 that says your name, and you're gonna put your name inside this span. For the h1, let's make it bold, increase the text size. For the small screens, it is going to be 5. For the medium, it is going to be 6. Once the viewport gets smaller, we don't want this text to wrap, so text no wrap. Tracking tighter, and this is basically going to bring the letters closer to each other. And for the name, we're gonna have a gradient. So let's create a background gradient to right from purple 500 to blue 500. To put the gradient inside the text, you gotta clip the text to the background and make the text transparent. And right after the span, we're gonna have this little emoji. Right after the h1, still inside this div, we're gonna have a paragraph with some lorem text inside. We're gonna set the maximum width of this container to 500 pixels. Text large, and for the medium screens, text is going to be X large. Finally, let's import the image that we are going to use. So this importing part is going to be a little bit tricky. If I don't explain this, it is going to confuse you. So right now, this header component is inside the components folder, and the image that we need to access is inside the public folder. So basically, we are 2 folders deep. We need to go outside the components folder, and once you go outside the components folder, now you are inside the source folder. So to be able to access the public folder, we need to go one more level up to go outside the source folder. And you go outside from the folder you are currently in by using --dash. We also need a name for the import. And as you can see, we are one level up. You can see the app, assets, and components file. We need to go one more level up. And now you can see the public folder. Inside the public folder, you're going to import image.png. Inside the image, open up a set of curly braces and put the image inside. Let's set the width to 32. And we are done with the header. We have the text with the gradient effects. We have the image on the right. Now we can go to the next part. Next part is the about section, and this is going to be the shortest one. Inside this div, we're going to be returning a h2 that says about, and right under this a paragraph with some lorem text. Let's put some space between these 2 elements using space UI1. Let's make this h2 bold and text X large, and this paragraph is going to be text gray 500 leading 5 to increase the line height. to 1.25 rem, text small, font semi-bold, and text pretty. And this is it with the About section. Next one is the Experience. Let's go inside the Experience file. We're going to be using a couple of logos for this component, so let's import them right away. Logo 1. You're going to be doing the same thing we did with the first image. You're going to go outside one level and then one more to access the public folder. Let's import 1.png. This is going to be 2, 3, 4, and 5. So inside this div, we're going to be returning 5 little cards. So first, let's put some space between them, space UI 3, and basically a title for this section. Let's make the text X large and font bold. It is going to say work experience. And right under this, we're going to return the cards. Let's create a div and make it flex container. Center the items and put some gap between them. We're going to have the image on the left. And right beside the image, we're going to have a couple of text. First, we're going to have the image on the left. Let's use logo 1. It is going to have a width of 14, so 3.5 rem. We're going to have a little border, and it is going to be a circle, so rounded XL. Right under this image, we're going to create another flex container. Center the items. Justify between to put some space between the elements that we are going to create, and to give equal space to each of these divs, we're going to set the flex 1. Inside this, another flex container. This time, we're going to change the flex direction to column because we want these two text to stay on top of each other. This H3 is going to have the company name, and the span under it is going to have the role. Let's make this one a bit bold. Let's set this to font medium, text gray 500, and text small. And outside this div, but still inside this one, we're going to create another div that is going to have the timeline. And as you can see, we have the first one, we have the image on the left, and these text, and the timeline on the right. We're going to create a couple of more of these. Also looks like we forget to set this image to rounded full. Let's take a look at it. We set it to rounded XL. This should be rounded full. And all we need to do is to copy and paste this and change the logo every single time. Let's change the job title as well. Just copy and paste it one more time. Change the logo. One more time. And this is the final one. And there you go. The work experience section is like this. Next, we're going to create the education section. Let's go into the education section and import the images that we are going to use. Image 1 from the public folder, education-1.png. Gonna be using only 3 images. So this education section is going to be pretty short as well, because it is going to be almost the exact one as the experience. So we can copy this and paste it here and just delete this last 2. We only need 3 cards. Let's also change the images to image 1, image 2, and image 3. And you can also change these H3s. Finally, let's change the title to education. And we have the education section as well. This is how it looks. The next part is the skills section. Let's go into the skills section. First, let's create the container for the skills section. Inside, we're gonna have a title that says skills with a large text. And right under this, we're gonna have another container with a gap 3 and flex wrap. So inside this container, we're gonna have 3 containers, and each of them are going to have 3 skill cards. Let's create the first one. This one is going to have a flex direction of column as well. We're gonna bring the items to the left, so items start, and justify center. Let's put some gap between them. So this first one is going to be HTML. Let's set the padding on the UI axis to 2, padding top and bottom, and px to 5. Gonna delete the border, set the text to white, font to semi-bold. Let's give it rounded corners. And when you hover over this box, gonna bring down the opacity to 75. And finally, we're gonna have this background gradient to right from red 500 to orange 500. And all the other cards are basically going to be like this. So let's copy and paste this. This one is going to be CSS. And this one is going to be JavaScript. Let's change the background gradient from sky 500 to blue 500. And JavaScript is going to be from orange 500 to yellow 500. So this is one box, and we're gonna have 2 more. So let's copy this and paste it 2 more times. So this second one, first one is going to be React, second one Node, and Tailwind. Let's delete this gradient. Let's make it from blue 500 to indigo 500. This second one is going to be from emerald to green. And the final one is going to be blue 400 to sky 500. And we're gonna have one more box like this. So right now we have 4 boxes inside this div, and because we set this div to flex wrap, once the viewport gets smaller, these boxes are going to wrap inside this div, so we don't have to deal with the responsiveness. And just to save some time, I'm gonna copy and paste these gradients. If you want to use the same gradients, you can just pause the video and type down the same. And we are done with the skills section. This is how it looks. Now we can go to the next part, which is the project section. Let's go into the project section and import the images that we are going to use. Project 1 from the public folder, project-1 PNG, and we're going to import 3 more, 2, 3, and 4. And oops, this one is going to be a JPEG. So let's turn this div into a container. Inside this container, we're going to have a h1, a h3, and a container that is going to contain all of the cards that we are going to create. We're going to have 4 cards. First, let's put some space between the h1, h3, and the container. Also, let's put some padding at the top. Inside, at the top, we're going to have a h1, font bold, text 4x large. For the smaller screens, it is going to be 5x large. For the medium, it is going to be 6. And let's center the text. Inside the h1, we're going to create a span and put the text inside the span. Let's set a background gradient for the span to the right from purple 500 to blue 500. You're gonna clip the text to the background and make the text transparent. Right under this H1, I'm gonna create a H3. I'm just gonna copy and paste the text inside. Let's set the font to semi-bold. Text gray 500, text X large, and center the text. And we are done with all of the text. Now we are going to create the container for the cards. It is going to be a flex container. Going to change the flex direction to column, center the items, and put some space between them using space UI 5. So as I said, we're going to have 4 cards, and for 4 cards we're going to create 2 containers, and each of these containers are going to contain 2 cards. So let's create the first container. For the smaller screens, it is going to be a flex container. Gap is going to be 5, space UI is going to be 5. And for these smaller screens, we are going to delete space UI. Inside, let's create our first card. It is going to be a flex container with the flex direction of column. Gonna bring the items on the baseline, so to the left. Bring the text to the left and put some space between them. Gonna set the maximum width to 300 pixels. Give it a 1 pixel border and rounded corners. Padding is going to be 5 on the each side. When you hover over it, you're gonna have this drop down shadow. And for the hover effect, let's create a transition. And let's set the duration to 300. When you hover over the card, cursor pointer is going to indicate that this card is something clickable. And on hover, you're gonna move the card up just a little bit by using translate UI 1. So this was the card container. At the top, you're gonna have the image. Let's use project 1. The image is going to have a width of 300 pixels and rounded corners. Right under the image, we're gonna have a H3 that says project 1. Let's set the text to text large and font bold. Right under this, we're gonna have this span, text small, and gray 500, font semi-bold. And let's put a time span for the project. And right under this span, we're gonna have this paragraph with some lorem text inside. Text X small, text gray 400, font medium, and maximum width of this paragraph is going to be 64. So 16 rem of maximum width. And right under this paragraph, we're gonna have the skills cards inside this component. I'm just going to copy and paste these 3 little cards. Let's create a div and gap between the cards. Text is going to be X small, and paste the little cards inside this container. So this is one card done inside this container, and we're gonna have another one. Let's copy this and paste it. Let's change this to project 2, and I will change the technologies that are used on this project. You can also copy and paste these cards from the skills section. So as I mentioned, this is one container with 2 cards inside. We need 2 more under these 2 cards. So we are going to copy and paste this container. One more time. Let's change this to project 3. And change this one to project 4. Let's change the little cards. And we are done with the project section. And here is how it looks. When you hover over the card, we have the shadow at the background. We have the technologies that are used on the projects. And now we can go to the next part, which is the contact. Let's go into the contact file. This one is going to be short as well. Let's create a container and make it a flex container and change the flex direction to column. Center the items. Put some gap between them. We're gonna have a H1, and inside the H1 we're gonna have this span. Get in touch. It is going to be bold. Text for X large. For the smaller screens it is going to be 5x large, and for the medium screens it is going to be 6x large. Center the text. And for these span elements we're going to create the same gradient text from purple 500 to blue 500. Background clip text, and to see through the text we're going to set the text transparent. Right under this H1 we're going to have this paragraph, text gray 500, font semi-bold, and a large text. Let's center this one as well. I'm just going to copy and paste this text again. And right under the paragraph, we're going to create a button that says contact me. Let's set the background to black, rounded corners. Padding on the x-axis is going to be 5 and PUI is going to be 3. Set the text to white, font to bold, and make the text large. So when you hover over this button, we are going to move it to the top. Let's set the transition for the hover effect as well. And duration is going to be 300 to make it smooth. Let's give it a 2-pixel border. And when you hover over the button, the background is going to be white. The border is going to be black. And text is also going to be black. And this is going to be font semi-bold. And let's also give this container a padding of 16 as well. And this is the get in touch section with the button. Only thing left is to create the navbar. Let's go into the navbar component, and this will be the last component that we are going to create. This navbar is also have a really unique design. It is going to be at the bottom instead of top. Let's make this div fixed to the bottom. So bottom 5, we are going to center it by using right 1-2, that means right 50%, and translate x 1-2, that means translate x 50%. And in this way we are going to be centering this div at the bottom. Let's make it a flex container and give it a border. Padding on the UI axis is going to be 2 and px is going to be 4. Let's give it rounded corners, rounded full. And to make sure that this navbar stays on top of everything else in the page, we're just going to set it to a really high number. Let's make it Z10. And it is going to have a glass effect at the background. So let's set the background to white, -70. That is basically the opacity. If I hover over it, you can see 0.2 opacity. And for the glass effect, we're going to use backdrop blur medium and a little shadow. Next, we're going to create a unordered list. It is going to be a flex container with gap of 3 between the elements. Text is going to be small. Center the items on the horizontal axis. Justify center. So we're going to have 4 list items inside, and each of these list items are not going to have any text. We are going to be using hero icons to put some icons inside. It is going to be a circle, so rounded full. a border of 2 pixels. It is going to be transparent. Let's set a padding of 2 as well. And when you hover over this list item, the background is going to be gray 100. Cursor is going to be pointer. And transition for the hover effects. Inside, we're going to have this anchor tag, and it is going to be leading us to the home section. To make this work, we need to give each of these sections IDs, and we are going to be doing that in a second. So inside this anchor tag, you're going to copy and paste a home image. But before that, let's create the other 3, second one, third one, and the fourth. Now let's go into the hero icons. We're going to look for a home icon. Click on this and copy SVG. Paste it inside this anchor tag. The second one is going to be the education section. Let's copy this one. Copy and paste it inside the second anchor tag. Let's change this to education. This third one is going to be projects. Let's look for an icon with the code. Let's copy this and paste it inside. And finally, for the contact section, we're gonna look for this phone. Let's copy this and paste it inside the last anchor tag. Let's make this contacts. Let's see how it looks. And there you go. We have created the design of the navbar. Now let's go into the header section and give this div a ID. Let's call it home. Let's go into the education section. Let's give it a ID of education. The project section is going to be projects. And the contact section is going to be contact. Let's see if it's working fine. So we are at the bottom of the website. If I click on this home, it is going to take me back to the top. And if I click on this cap, it is going to take me to the education section. This is for the project and this is for the contact. But we have a little problem, which is it happens too quick. And to make it smoother, we're gonna go inside the main index.css file. Gonna select the entire HTML element and we're gonna apply scroll behavior smooth. And now if I click on the sections, as you can see, it is much more smooth. Let's also check if the responsiveness is working fine. And the responsiveness is working fine. So this is how we can create this portfolio website using React and Tailwind. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for your time, and I will see you next time.